Trying to make it in the medtech world right now, well, it's a real challenge. Capital is tight, and that means strong leadership is more critical than it's ever been. So what does that leadership actually look like in the boardroom? We're about to distill some amazing expert advice on how to lead from the top, especially when things get tough.
So here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with the board's new mission in this crazy landscape. Then we'll dive into this big shift from just oversight to true foresight. After that, we'll get into what it means to lead through the headwinds everyone's facing, how you evolve the leadership team, and finally, some really direct advice for anyone who's on that path to the boardroom.
All right, first up, the board's mission has fundamentally changed. You know that old playbook of just showing up to meetings, checking a few boxes, making sure the finances are in order? Yeah, that's just not going to cut it anymore. Not if you want to succeed today.
Which really brings us to the core question of this whole explainer. In today's complex, super fast-moving world, what is the actual job of a board director? As we're about to see, the answer has gotten way more interesting. And really, the answer comes down to this one huge shift in perspective. It's all about moving from being reactive to being proactive. Let's call it the journey from oversight to foresight. Now take a look at this, because it really lays it all out. The old job, right? It was all about governance, fiduciary responsibility, basically making sure the rules were followed, checking the boxes. But the new job, it's about foresight, strategic curiosity, and being an active guide and problem solver right there alongside the management team. It's about trying to see what's coming around the next corner.
And listen, this is not just some theory. Veteran startup leader Mike Nathan puts it perfectly. He says, you have to be a support, helper, therapist, priest, CPA, attorney for your CEO. I mean, think about that. It just highlights the deeply human side of the role. You're a support system for a CEO who's under an unbelievable amount of pressure, and you're providing emotional support just as much as you are strategic advice.
And I love this phrase from board member Beverly Huss. It just brilliantly illustrates the new mandate. A director's job isn't to run the company. No, it's to be a force multiplier. You're there to amplify the efforts of the CEO and the entire team, using your network, your experience, and your perspective to make them way more effective than they could be on their own.
Okay, so we've got this idea of a force multiplier board. But what does that actually look like in the real world, especially with all the economic headwinds we're facing? Well, this is where that big idea turns into practical, hands-on leadership.
Right now, CEOs are just getting scrappy. They're in survival mode. As one panelist said, they are literally looking for pennies under the couch cushions. They're chasing down non-traditional funding, they're being forced to do way more with way less, and they're battling this incredibly tough reimbursement landscape. The pressure is just immense.
So, in the middle of all this chaos, what's the board's job? It's captured in two simple but really powerful words: lean in. This is absolutely not the time to be a passive observer sitting on the sidelines. And leaning in isn't just some fluffy corporate buzzword. Here's what it actually looks like. It means you're acting as an extension of the leadership team. You're proactively opening up your network for fundraising or for biz dev. You're sharing your own hard-won expertise. And this one is crucial. You're helping the CEO pressure test their plans and see the blind spots they might be missing.
When you get this involved, it inevitably leads to some tougher conversations. And that's about making sure the right people are in the right seats, not just at the executive level, but in the boardroom itself. Because as a company grows, its needs change.
Look, sometimes the founder who got the company off the ground, they might not be the right person to scale it. It happens. But a great board doesn't just come in with a hatchet. They handle this with a patient, humane process. First, they try to coach and support. Then, they build a stronger team around the founder. They look for new roles where that founder's passion can still add value. An exit is always the last resort, and it's handled with grace.
And here is the absolute kicker. This principle of evolution, it doesn't stop with the C-suite. The board itself has to have the self-awareness to evolve right alongside the company.
Think about it, right? The skills you need for pre-commercial R&D phase are totally different from the skills you need to manage a commercial sales force. Effective boards know this. They're self-aware. They set term limits to create these natural off-ramps, and they're constantly and proactively recruiting new members whose expertise matches the company's next big challenge.
Okay, so if you're listening to this and thinking, hey, I'd like to be on a board someday, this last section is especially for you. How can you prepare yourself to be the kind of director that we've been talking about this whole time?
Beverly Huss offers what might be the best gut check I've ever heard. Just ask yourself this question.
If you're on a board, would you want to be in a foxhole with those people? Because when a crisis hits, and trust me, it will, that's the real test of a board. It's about trust, it's about resilience, and it's about collaboration when you're under fire.
So how do you become that person? The one they want in the foxhole with them? Well, first, be a genuine subject matter expert in a critical area. Know your value, and earn your seat by helping and advising long before you ever ask for a spot. Be ready for the hard days, and please remember this great piece of advice. It is absolutely okay to be quiet if you have nothing to add. Don't just talk to hear your own voice.
And that brings us to our final thought. The modern board director isn't just a governor anymore. They are a guide, a partner, and a crisis-ready leader. So the real question you have to ask yourself isn't just about strategy or finance, it's about character. When things get really tough, are you truly ready for the foxhole?